Hello everyone and welcome to the finale. Yes, I can't believe it's finally here, but after a long week and 3 other videos where we counted down number 100 through 11, it is finally time to wrap up our countdown of the top 100 comics of 2017 by counting down the top 10. But before we get into that, as always, a few honorable mentions. It happened again. I know, in case you have never seen one of these top 100 lists, you're probably wondering, hey, it's 100 books. How on earth do you have honorable mentions? Well, for the past 2 years that we've been doing this, every single time that I hit that number 10 spot, and we are almost done with these videos, suddenly I remember, oh right, that book also came out this year. There is a book that I always remember at the last second that would definitely have made it onto this list. So it's kind of become a tradition at this point for me to come on here at the start of the top 10 and tell you what book I forgot to put on the list. The first year that we did this, it was Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, which that book actually probably would have made it into the top 10. That book was amazing and deserved all kind of praise, and I felt like such a jackass for forgetting to put it on the list. Last year, it was Great Lake Avengers. Now that book would have made it into the top 10, and judging by the fact that this book did not make it into our list this year, it did kind of fizzle out towards the end, but those first couple of issues that came out in 2016 were fantastic, and I probably would have put it around the 30s, so it still would have made it really high. This year, it's not that bad. I forgot that the Chip Zdarsky Star-Lord book had several issues that came out in 2017, and that was actually really darn good. It was a great look at that character, had a lot of humor and heart, which is the thing that Chip Zdarsky is known for, so I probably would have put it around number 80, so it's not as bad as the previous 2 years, but it definitely would have made it onto this list, and I forgot to put it on there. I don't know why it's always Marvel books that I forget come out every single year. That's weird. Anywho, on to the finale. 4 kids walk into a bank. I've spoken numerous times about how much I love Matthew Rosenberg, and this wasn't his first comic, but it was probably the one that caused him to blow up. It's the one that got many people talking, and for good reason. This series is about a young girl and her 3 friends who one day learn that her father is tangled up with something of a bad crowd. They're calling him back into action one last time to pay off a debt that he owes, so he's going to have to help them rob a bank. However, these kids start meddling in their plan, and at first, it's pretty impressive how on top of it they are, how they're able to spy on their plan, how they're able to trick them, how they're able to prepare to take these guys on. But when it starts to get out of hand, it goes so bad, it's actually kind of amazing to watch. The build-up to the actual bank robbery makes this one of the most clever series I've read all year, but seeing the main event, the title attraction we've been building up to all this time, it was pulled off in a way that was more than worth the wait. The final issue of this series is one of the best final issues of a book I've ever read. Number 9, Hostage. Hostage is the real story of Christoph Andrea's kidnapping in 1997 when he was working as a humanitarian doctor in Caucasus. He was held for ransom for over $1 million by kidnappers who didn't even speak the same language as him, and he was forced to survive with no knowledge of what was happening in the outside world. Now, I'm not just putting this book on the list because it's a true story. I'm putting it up here because it's a very dramatic story that is told as best as it possibly can be told in this book, and I mean that in more ways than one. Because, and I do not say this lightly, and I'm not being hyperbolic, this is the best example of what makes a comic book a unique medium and why certain stories are fit specifically for comic books I've ever read. This book could not be interpreted into a novel. It could not be turned into a movie. It works so damn well, and it can only work as a comic. The book is divided up day by day as he is trapped in this tiny room handcuffed to a radiator with no one else around. And the book is supposed to immerse you. It's supposed to make you feel how he feels being stuck there, and comic books use panels to show the passage of time. And depending on how those panels are laid out, how much action is happening in them, it controls the flow of time. Well, as Christoph was trapped in this room, he just sat there and waited. And when you see a panel of nothing going by, followed by a panel of nothing, and another panel of nothing, it makes you realize, dear God, I'm trapped here and I can't do anything. And 99% of the dialogue in this book is his own thoughts as he just wonders what the hell is happening outside because he doesn't understand a word anyone is saying to him. And that helps with this immersion because when all you have to hear are his thoughts, and you are reading his thoughts, and those thoughts are being read out to you inside your own head, after a while, those become your thoughts. When he says, it's fine, I'll be out here in a few days, a week tops. No way can they keep me here beyond a week. Things are in motion, I'm sure of it. You feel that way too. You think, yeah, you know what? He's right. He'll be fine. I'm sure of it. Then you realize that you're on page 52 of a book that's over 400 pages. You feel horrible for this man in the first week, and he's kidnapped for over 100 days. But it's not just the waiting that you connect with. You see moments where his captors offer him a cigarette, or they let him watch a soccer game with them, and he thinks, you know what? They're not that bad. And you think that too, only to have to remind yourself, oh, that's right, they're kidnappers. This book made you feel Stockholm Syndrome. So all throughout this book, I just marveled at how well it was able to convey the experience our protagonist was going through, but at the same time, I was fully invested in it. I wanted to see Kristoff escape, and I won't spoil how the story ends, but when I got to the last 50 pages, I had to keep reading. I couldn't stop. I had to finally know how all this ended. Number 8, my favorite thing is monsters. Alright, I just said that Hostage was the best example of how something can only work as a comic, about how something can use the unique format of comics to tell their story, but my favorite thing is Monsters is a damn close second. This is the story of a young girl in the 1960s who loves monsters and especially monster magazines, but one day a woman in her building is found dead, and she suspects there might be a mystery behind all this. Now, this book paints a great picture of what it's like to be a kid who is something of an outcast, to be different from everyone else, but to be okay with that. But it also creates such a great cast of characters. From our protagonist, who while being wiser than most kids her age, is still a child who doesn't understand the world, to her family, who show off multiple sides of themselves that can have you feeling one way in one scene and then completely different in the next. Almost like the murder isn't the only mystery. Almost like discovering who these people in your life are is another mystery in and of itself. But the thing that makes this book go from good to something truly special is its presentation. This book is meant to resemble this girl's notebook. Everything is presented on 3-ring bound lined paper where our protagonist has written and drawn everything that's happening. But we get to see it through her eyes. Just by looking at the art, you can tell how she thinks, how she feels about the world and everyone in her life, what makes her such a unique person, and it really lets you understand just how little she knows about what is happening around her. It's such a unique way of telling a story that gets inside her head better than any other approach possibly could. Not to mention, it looks gorgeous. It's the perfect blend of a child's sketches and those old monster magazines that she's a fan of. Having a touching, dramatic story gets you on this list, but combining it with the most innovative and creative way of telling the story I've seen all year gets you into the top 10. Number 7, Heavenly Blues. This is easily the winner this year for the book that no one talked about that everyone should have. Okay, I guess I shouldn't say that. The whole reason why I picked this book up was because I was reading some reviews online of it that said it was amazing, but still, out of all the small indie books that blew up this year, I kept waiting for Heavenly Blues to explode, and I'm still waiting. So allow me to give it my own personal push here, because holy cow did I love this series. This is a story of criminals in hell. But not the fire and brimstone hell. It's more of just a beat-up, crappy town where you first arrive, then get tortured till you crawl out of a hole, then you just have to survive. Forever. Well, not everyone is happy with this plan, and one day, 2 criminals, a 1930s gangster and a pickpocket who is so old she was burned for being a witch, are given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. an angel has come down and needs to recruit some crooks to pull a heist job in heaven. From there, it follows the typical beats of a heist story. They have to gather together their crew. Each of them are screwed up individuals, but they each have their own special skills. They then have to case the joint. You know the beats, you know what happens in a heist film, except it's sinners in hell having to pull a heist on heaven. Everything you can imagine about how to make that idea work is pulled off about as well as it could be in this book. The members of the crew are some of the craziest figures from across time. A cowboy, a disgraced ninja, an Egyptian tomb robber, and throughout this story, we get to explore each of their past. We see them facing their own demons, but they have to come together for this one time only in an eternity chance to escape their punishment. It makes for one of the best and most creative heist stories I've ever read. Number 6, God Country. Donny Cates has been one of my favorite rising stars in the comic book industry, and this was the year where he really blew up, and it was largely thanks to this series. It's the story of a man bringing his family to visit his father in Texas, but this father is suffering from Alzheimer's, and he's in the late stages of it. He can't remember his family, his life, anything, and it's caused him to be violent and aggressive. Everything that once remained of this man is gone. But when a giant magical sword falls out of the sky, the father touches it and suddenly his mind is healed. He remembers everything. Only problem is, the owner of the sword, a god of nearly unlimited power and with armies that span the cosmos, wants that sword back, and he's about to send everything he has at this man and his family to get it. This is a story about family, about life, about what's important to you and what you'll do to keep it. This is a man who didn't lose anything material. He lost his memories. He lost things that money can't buy, that can't be replaced. The things that define who you are and truly do matter most in life. And darn it, a man deserves his memories. And it all comes down to one man having to face the impossible to hold on to them. It's a book that looks gorgeous, is loaded with great dialogue and action, but in the end, it's a touching story about what it means to be a man and to have a family and to have people in your life that you care about. Number 5, Extremity. Every year, there's one book from Image that blows me away unlike anything else I've read that year. Something so creative and new that it will stick with me for years down the line, and this year that book was Extremity. It's the story of a far-off fantasy world where a brutal empire has spread out, conquering every land in its path, and the story focuses on Thea, the daughter of a tribe leader who was destined to be a great artist, to be a creator, until this empire ripped her arm off. Now she can't do the thing she loved, the thing that brought joy to others, and she wants revenge. But she's not the only one. Her father has basically gone mad and is driven only by the need to murder the enemy, while her brother doesn't want any part of this and wants everyone to find peace. That's what makes this book so good. Every single character is so complex. They each have multiple sides to themselves because Thea wants revenge so bad, but she wasn't a killer. She was an artist. Her father is pushing the rest of his family away as he is only focused on revenge, but his wife was murdered, his home was burned to the ground, and his daughter was disfigured. Yeah, you kinda understand why he's so obsessed with this. And her brother is expected to be a warrior. He's expected to be a hunter and a fighter and a killer, but he's a pacifist because all he's known is death, and he doesn't think causing more of it is the answer. This family has so many layers to them, and when you throw them into one of the most creative fantasy worlds of the year, yeah, this book is a must-read. Number 4, Black Bolt. It's a book by a fairly new comic writer focusing on a character who can't talk. This was either going to be a huge misfire or one of the most pleasant surprises of the year, and I'm happy to say it was the latter. Black Bolt has always been a very mysterious character. He basically just stood there and stared off into the distance as people had to translate for him. Well, when Black Bolt was tricked into going to a space prison that was basically the 7 layers of hell, he had his powers taken away, meaning he was finally able to talk, and he spent several issues just examining his own sins, wondering what had brought him from king of his own people to being trapped in this jail. It wasn't until reading this book that I realized just what a twisted and tormented past Black Bolt had experienced, and this whole series is just one long character study. But it's not even a character study of just him. He's paired up with another prisoner, the Absorbing Man, and Black Bolt is a king, but he's now interacting with the most blue-collar of supervillains, and seeing their two lives spread out against each other gives you a deep appreciation for both of them. In fact, this book probably had my favorite single issue of any series I read all year, with one issue where the two of them are locked in a cell as the air is slowly being drained from the room, and they both realize they're about to die. So they just spend the whole issue talking about their lives. It's honestly beautiful and will make you look at all these characters in a completely different light. Number 3, Black Hammer. Last year, Black Hammer impressed all of us by creating a book that served as commentary on the silver and golden age of comics while crafting a truly unique mystery that was both intriguing and eerie. And going into the second year, I was wondering how much longer they could keep this mystery going, while at the same time continuing to go into the past and reveal to us stories about these heroes before they came to this world. And the answer was pretty darn long. This year, we continued to learn the backstories of these characters, and it didn't feel old or repetitive. It felt like there really was more to tell. It continued making each of them deeper and adding more dimensions to them. Seeing Abraham Slam trying to be a hero as the world had outgrown him was heartbreaking. Seeing Golden Gale trying to give up her life as a hero only to be called in for what was destined to be the battle she couldn't return from made you realize how much pain she was going through. And that's not to say that this year was just learning more backstory and flashbacks. We had several massive twists this year that left me with no idea where this series would go. And as I said in the last episode, when you have a book where I truly have no idea what will be in the next issue, that's a rare treat. This year, the mystery of this town and what happened to these heroes became so intriguing, I can't wait to learn the answers, but at the same time, I kind of don't want to, because when you have a mystery this good, you don't want it to end. Number 2, Mighty Thor. Jason Aaron has been building up the current storyline in Thor for years, and it shows. In the world of comic books, so many creators come on, have one story in mind, tell it, then they jump off so someone else can come on, or they just move on to the next story and none of it really connects or builds into anything. But Jason Aaron has been building up the stakes, the villains, the heroes, their struggles, their allies, and the war for the 10 realms for years, and this was the year when it finally all started to pay off. This was the year that we saw the Asgardian Shi'ar War, the resurrection of the Phoenix, the War Thor, the arrival of Mangog. Any one of these moments would have been memorable enough to stick with us all year long, yet Jason Aaron just kept amping it up over and over, making each story bigger. And across the background of this entire year, we had to watch as Jane Foster was slowly dying of cancer. We knew that Jane's health was diminishing, and that each time she picked up the hammer, she returned weaker than before. But this was the year when we saw so many massive threats popping up one after another that, yeah, no way could she not pick it up. Even if you knew it was killing her, she was the only one who could save the day, making you want to cheer her on when she came in there as a hero, but at the same time, begging her to get back to bed and put the hammer down. That's some masterful levels of storytelling when you can make the audience feel all of that at once. And as I said, we're not even at the climax of this storyline, so I can only imagine how good this series is going to be next year. And the number 1 comic of 2017, Mr. Miracle. Tom King is a guy who took the vision and made it a story about prejudice, discrimination, family, drug addiction, and a murder mystery in a small suburban community. So when I heard he would be writing Mr. Miracle, I had no idea what that could lead to. And yet, on the second page of this series, they let you know exactly what it was going to be about, as we saw Mr. Miracle lying in a bathroom with his wrist slit. This book takes Mr. Miracle scot-free A man who was a celebrity and the world's greatest escape artist, and it shows that when you can escape everything, when you can easily conquer anything before you, then what's the point? Everything becomes dull. Everything just feels numb. But this book doesn't just cover crippling depression, it also covers PTSD, because while Mr. Miracle is going through this, he is thrown into a war between New Genesis and Apocalypse, and he is forced to go into battle again and again and again, constantly fighting, constantly seeing death around every corner. And Tom King is a writer who has been criticized for his constant repetition, but here that actually works. The repetitiveness of this series pays off because these battles really do give you that feeling that he has been beaten down and this is all that his life is, one battle after another. And as I mentioned on the last episode, Tom King was a CIA operative in Iraq. He's probably had to experience this feeling himself or through other people close to him, and he's really able to convey that onto the page. But that's not the only thing that makes this book incredible. While this whole series is a personal journey for Mr. Miracle, it's also a really intriguing tale about what's happening on New Genesis. Darkseid has returned, he's killed Highfather, Orion has taken the throne, and Orion might have gone mad with power. He might have been possessed by Darkseid and the anti-life equation, so now Scott has to work through all of this and at the same time decide what he's going to do about Orion. But for anyone who doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about, Darkseid is a god who is searching for something called the anti-life equation, which is meant to be weaponized soul-crushing despair. It is meant to destroy people's hopes so much that it will turn them into slaves. And while part of you wants to look at Orion turning evil and going mad and thinking, yeah, he's the bad guy here, Scott is suffering from crippling depression, and he's starting to think that he should turn on the ruler of New Genesis, the enemy of Apocalypse, and he keeps hearing the words Darkseid is over and over again. So this whole series leaves you wondering, what's really happening to Scott? Could he actually be the one possessed by the anti-life equation and we don't even know? And that's not even all there is to this book. On top of all that, this book takes Mr. Miracle and Big Barda, two gods from faraway worlds, and makes them the most human couple in comics all year. This is the best written romance and interaction between a husband and wife I read in 2017. And thinking of how all of this is at the core of everything else I just mentioned, it makes this a book that builds so many levels and attempts so much and succeeds at all of it. Thank you guys for tuning in for the top 100 comics of 2017. Again, if you guys did not check out part 1 or part 2 or part 3, they're all up there on the screen right now. If you like these videos, then please share them around the web. I worked really hard and it took a long time to get them done. So if you could share them around, that would really help us out. It is the best way to promote us. Also, you can always follow me on Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr at Professor Thorgy, and let me know in the comments down below what were your favorite comics of 2017. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time.